Administrator and all the other invited guests. Over the past few days, on a number of occasions in one day, I've been giving a lot of talks about various aspects of the Fijian economy. And I think whilst the seminar this afternoon is more focused on Lautoka, it's perhaps a good opportunity now to perhaps tell you about some of the national policies that have been put in place that will in fact have an impact on your town's development. As you know, the Prime Minister has announced a very unprecedented number of policies in the 2014 budget. First and foremost, obviously, was the additional or the unprecedented amount of over $500 million that has been allocated for education. Now, what this $500 million does is, in fact, it makes truly, for the first time in Fiji's history, primary and secondary school absolutely free. To put it into perspective, this year and the years preceding this, government used to give $30 a child at primary school level. So if you had a school of 1,000 students at $30, that school committee or whatever it was that used to run the school would get $30,000 a year. From next year, the school will get $250 a child, which is $250,000. From $30,000 to $250,000. What that means, ladies and gentlemen, is that firstly, it means that the parents do not have to fork out a single cent. For even some of the basic excursions from the schools, they don't have to pay a single cent. It also means that you will now have absolutely no reason to see children roaming the streets of your towns or cities selling cassava or mangoes or roti parcels, whatever it may be, because the parents could not afford the building fees or whatever fees schools used to charge. It also means that the schools will now have ample funds to invest in the schools. So we should not have, in a few years' time, schools without computers, even at primary school level. We should not have schools where some schools in Fiji till today don't even have a concrete floor. We should not have schools where there should be a differentiation just because they're in somewhere in some remote rural part of Fiji or in some island in the Yasawa group or whatever it may be. All schools must be of the same caliber, must have the same level of access to the infrastructure, to the amenities that is required to educate a Fijian child. What it also means is that as parents, you now have more money in your pocket, because we know that parents used to scramble around. If you have 3-4 children in your family, you have to, if you, for example, on average had to pay about $50 to $100 a child for building fund fees, etc., there is about $400 or $500. That $400 or $500 now will remain in your pocket. How you use it is obviously up to you. Hopefully they won't go and drink it at the club. Hopefully that they will use it to either invest more money in their children or paint their house, whatever it may be. But it is giving you more money in your pocket. So we're giving you more control over your funds and less worry. Fourthly now, what it also means is that within a few years' time, we will have a very well educated workforce or employable workforce. Because on top of that, the Prime Minister announced that from next year, any student that completes Form 7 and wants to obtain tertiary qualifications, whether at degree level, at diploma level, or even at certificate level, as long as they get a letter of offer from a tertiary institution, their fees can be paid for by the government. by way of a soft loan. Very, very low interest rate. It applies even to students who are already enrolled. So those students who are currently, for example, first year in accounting or whatever course they may be studying, for example, at this university, next year, if they are not on a scholarship, they're entitled to have their fees paid by government. They only pay back that money once they have gainful employment. So ladies and gentlemen, in 5 to 10 years' time, Fiji will again have a very good crop of well-educated people. Now that obviously has an impact on the economy. It means that the employers will have a good crop, a good selection of people to choose from. It also means it makes Fiji an attractive destination for investment purposes, because if government, for example, is providing a 7-year corporate tax holiday, if you want to invest in the ICT sector, Australian, New Zealand and other companies would want to come and set up shop in Fiji, because the cost of business is a lot more cost effective in Fiji. It is a lot more efficient. We are competitive in our pricing, and we'll have a very good group of people who are very well educated. So these are some of the ideas behind making Fiji a smart country, as the Prime Minister said, a well-educated country, because it has numerous spin-offs. It is also positioning ourselves. You may have seen that over the past couple of days we have said that Fiji has the ability to surpass that of Singapore in terms of GDP, in terms of growth, in terms of positioning ourselves. And it is a fact. Singapore is the size of Taveuni. Fiji is a lot bigger than Taveuni, of course. Singapore, Singaporeans, when they want the military to go and have training in the jungle, they have to go and hire a jungle from Malaysia or Indonesia. Their water is brought over from Malaysia. Nearly every single thing is imported in Singapore. Fiji does not have those kind of impediments, because we have vast tracts of land. We have the ability to grow our own food. Indeed, we have the ability to even export food, which we are doing to an extent. And there's enormous potential in that area. So the Bainimarama government's policies have been very well thought out. In particular, over the past 3 to 4 years, it's a building block. Our growth rate is now 3.6%, as it has been revised. We have been talking to various multilateral agencies, etc., and indeed they tell us the path that we are on will ensure, if we continue with this, and obviously continuity, consistency is imperative to ensure economic growth rates and to ensure confidence in any economy. So this must continue, and if it does continue, then obviously the world's our oyster. So I think as a town, as a city, we need to be able to take advantage of these sorts of initiatives that have been put in place. One thing that I would like to highlight in particular, within the context of democratization, there is always a lot of emphasis, for example, on national parliamentary democracy. We must have national elections. Of course, the content of that democracy, the methodology of appointing a government is also very, very critical. And Fiji has never had true democracy in that sense, where one person's vote is of the same value as the person sitting or standing next to them. That we will have next year. But democracy is not only restricted to national parliaments. Democracy must permeate throughout society in itself. And one of the issues that I've been trying to grapple with this week has been, for example, chambers of commerces. We have a number of towns in Fiji where there have been absolutely no collaboration between the special administrator and the chambers of commerce or the chamber of commerce in that particular town. It is critical for that to happen. Similarly, we have chambers of commerce where people have become presidents or chairmen or whatever the position is, and they hold on to it. They don't want to let go. it becomes their own little fiefdom to have their names in the papers or get publicity. That is not the purpose of the Chamber of Commerce. Indeed, we had sporting organizations in Fiji where people have been presidents for 25 years. That obviously does not augur well for any type of organization. Whether it's a Chamber of Commerce, whether it's a sporting organization, or even a student organization. We must always have new ideas, new ways of looking at things, making paradigm shifts, thinking outside the box. It's only then that any organization becomes quite vibrant and dynamic. So I think in the new Fiji, when we're talking about modernization, when we are talking about making changes, we need to be, as a society, be able to make those changes even at that lower levels. And I think people need to put their hands up also. You know, I've seen some chambers of commerce where there'll be a lot of people who'll criticize, but they won't put their hands up to become, run for a particular position. We can see it at any level. Indeed, I was at another forum a few days ago, as I've highlighted to you that there's been, now a school will get about $250,000 as opposed to $30,000 in a primary school. A lot of these schools are run by committees. I'm sure everybody's rubbing their hands and saying, oh, let's go and become a committee member, because they'll be getting access to a larger amount of funds. So obviously at that level too, we need to have transparency. We need to have people who want to join organizations for the right reasons. The reason why I'm highlighting all these issues to you is because if we are, for example, as a government, providing various incentives and initiatives, building new roads, putting in expanding the national grid, putting in water systems, giving various corporate tax incentives, reducing personal income tax levels. Publicly listed companies now will have to pay only 10% corporate tax rate. If all of these things are being done, we also need to ensure that all other facets of our society are also moving along with the times. In Fiji, for example, there's a lack of town planners. There's a lack of engineers in certain areas. We also need to lift up our game as professionals. I had somebody 2 days ago complaining to me about Town and Country Planning Office when application has been stuck for 20 years. Now obviously if those people in those regulatory and approval agencies do not lift up their game, we cannot become like Singapore. So it's all facets of society that need to interact. I like to tell this story. When we were first appointed to the government, to register a company could take you somewhere from 6 months to 1 year. When we came in, we said, okay, we have to reduce the time of registration. We brought it down to 40 days. And then for some foreign companies, we brought it down to 30 days. When I went to Singapore, they registered a company in 15 minutes. And in fact, they said they're very disappointed. They want to register companies in 3 minutes. That was the target time, turnaround time. It's a completely different ball game. Completely different ball game. So we have to be prepared to be able to reinvent ourselves as individuals, as an institution, as an organization, as a town, as a city, and indeed as a country. And that is what is critical, is the investment in ourselves and our ability to reflect on ourselves to see where we want to be, what are our strengths and what are our weaknesses. And I'm sure as the university lecturers will tell you, that is very critical in order for you to be able to succeed. As I said to a group of parents at a high school gathering on Monday, do not force your child when they leave high school to do accounting just because you know of your relative who's getting a very high salary in accounting. Your child may hate accounting. If they're very good in marine science, if they want to become an automotive mechanic, let them do that. Because no job is any less than any other job. But if they have the passion for it, if they have a yearning for it, they'll excel in it. And I think that is very, very critical to understand. This is why government is investing enormous amounts of money now in vocational training. Because there's actually a dearth of tradespeople, a real shortage of that. So Lautoka, of course, under the guardianship of the administrator, who also looks after Ba and Tavua, we believe has done a number of remarkable turnarounds. There's some very exciting projects that are coming to the fore. We've got the Tapu City that the Prime Minister did the groundbreaking ceremony for at Churchill Park. There's going to be another new hotel that will be built, and we hope to have the groundbreaking ceremony for that in the next few weeks, hopefully. And we are again trying to position the respective towns and cities for the very strengths and positions that they have. So ladies and gentlemen, I can talk to you for hours about all the policies and initiatives we have, but I thought I'd just highlight in particular taking education, seeing that we are at the education institution, as to how we are positioning ourselves. I think there needs to be an understanding, before I finish off, of the various roles that we play in a society and the impact it can have. As I said about some of the regulatory agencies, the town and country planning delays a project. They should not view it as this is simply an application. An application that could mean the creation of jobs. An application that could mean the improvement in the valuation of the land around that particular development. An application that could mean economic growth rate for our country and new foreign exchange coming into the country. So people need to know themselves how they are situated within the economic climate of the country, within the commercial and financial sense of the whole spectrum of the economic growth rate and indeed economic development of the country. So thank you very much for the invitation. I wish the Chamber all the success. I'm sure you've had a long day, don't want to listen to a long speech, but you know, with the concurrence of the MC, I'm quite happy to take any questions. If people have any questions that they want to ask, and I'll be happy to answer them. Minaka, thank you.
Thank you, our honored guest. Since he has